A 9-year-old girl ran away from home after discovering she was pregnant, but no one expected she would marry a mysterious millionaire. The news shocked the nation. A child dressed as a bride next to a powerful and reclusive man. When the mansion doors opened, the truth behind that unsettling union was revealed, and it broke everyone's heart. Subscribe to the channel for heartwarming stories every day. The millionaire watched the city from the panoramic window of his penthouse office. Below, tiny as ants, people rushed about, unaware of the weight of the silence that surrounded him. His fingers drummed on the mahogany desk as the quarterly financial report displayed numbers that would make any businessman celebrate. But there was no smile on his face, just the same impassive expression as always. "Profits are up 20%, informed the assistant, standing at the door with impeccable posture, but receiving no reaction of enthusiasm. "Transfer the bonus to the employees' accounts as usual," he replied, without taking his eyes off the cityscape. "And cancel my weekend appointments." The assistant nodded, already accustomed to the weekends when her boss disappeared to his secluded mansion on the outskirts of the city. Rumor had it in the company hallways that he spent hours locked in a specific room, which not even the butler was allowed to enter. Other rumors suggested that he kept memories there of a past he never shared with anyone. Miles away, in a simple house on the wrong side of the tracks, the girl huddled in the corner of her tiny room. The peeling walls silently witnessed her despair as she hugged her knees to her chest. Tears escaped her swollen eyes, wetting the faded fabric of the only clean dress she owned. "Get out of there now!" roared the gruff voice from the other side of the door, followed by a thump that made the fragile wood tremble. "You think we're gonna support another mouth in this house? You're nothing but a burden, just like your mother was." Heavy footsteps moved away down the hallway, but the fear remained, glued to her skin like a second layer. The nausea returned, forcing her to run to the bucket in the corner of the room. As her small body was racked by spasms, her mind swirled in turmoil. 3 days had passed since she confessed about the morning sickness, about the pains in her belly, about the strange bleeding. The doctor at the clinic had sent a sealed paper that her uncle tore up in front of her after reading. "Pregnant," he had said, spitting the word like venom before raising his hand against her for the first time. That night, hidden under the thin mattress, the girl pulled out the only object that remained of her mother, a silver locket with a worn inscription, and inside it, a carefully folded piece of paper. "If you ever need help, look for this man," her mother had whispered on her deathbed almost a year ago. "He may not want to help at first, but show him the locket. He'll understand." On the paper, a name and an address. The millionaire's mansion on the hill, the one everyone in town knew, but that no one ever visited. "Tomorrow," decided the girl, wiping the tears with the back of her bruised hand. "Tomorrow I'll find him." On the other side of the city, the millionaire opened the door to the secret room. In the center of the simply decorated room, there was only a framed photograph on a table. In it, the smiling face of a young woman held a locket identical to the one the girl now clutched against her chest. 16 years, he murmured to the silence. 16 years since I ran away from you, and the responsibility." He didn't know that the next morning, the past would knock on his door, with the eyes of the woman he abandoned and with a secret that would change his life forever. The morning arrived with a sky heavy with grey clouds, as if the universe itself sensed the storm of events that was about to break. In the mansion on the hill, the millionaire prepared for his ritual of isolation. He dismissed the staff, as he did every weekend, keeping only the security system activated. "Are you sure about this, sir?" "The forecast indicates a severe storm," commented the butler before leaving. "As always," replied the millionaire dryly, closing the door to the outside world. At that same instant, the girl walked with difficulty along the muddy road that led to the hill. The makeshift backpack made from an old sheet weighed on her back, containing only a change of clothes, her mother's locket, and a roll stolen from the kitchen before running away. During the early hours, she had overheard the adults in the house planning to send her away to a place where they would get rid of the problem without leaving a trace. The rain began to fall when she saw the high iron gates of the property. The thick drops mixed with the tears on her face as her fingers trembled while pressing the intercom. "Private property," announced a mechanical voice. "Identify yourself." I need to speak to the owner of the house," she stammered, clutching the locket in her pocket. "My mother said he could help me. There are no scheduled visits. Leave, or I'll call security." The girl leaned against the gate, feeling the weight of despair. It was then that she noticed the security camera pointed at her. With trembling hands, she took the locket out of her pocket and raised it towards the lens. Inside the mansion, the millionaire watched the security monitors when the image of the small, soaked figure appeared on the screen. He was about to authorize the external team to remove her when a metallic glint caught his attention. He zoomed in on the image, feeling the blood run cold in his veins. "Impossible," he murmured, immediately recognizing the object. His fingers hesitated over the gate release button. That locket belonged to the past, to a chapter of his life that he had struggled to forget. 16 years ago, he had given one just like it to the one who would be the mother of his child, the child he never knew, the woman he abandoned when he discovered the unwanted pregnancy. "Who are you?" he asked through the intercom, his voice more unsteady than he would have liked. "My name doesn't matter. My mother said you could help me. She died a year ago." The millionaire felt a pang in his chest. "And who was your mother?" The girl spoke a name that he had sworn never to say aloud again. The man's legs weakened, forcing him to lean against the nearest wall. "How do I know you're not lying?" he questioned, while a part of him already knew the answer. "She gave me this," replied the girl, opening the locket to reveal the inside, where there was a small, faded photo. The millionaire, 16 years younger, next to the woman he had abandoned. His trembling finger pressed the button, causing the gates to slowly open. The rain fell harder now, as if trying to wash away the sins of the past. The millionaire walked to the entrance, watching the small figure cross the lawn towards him. The closer she got, the more he recognized the familiar features, the same eyes, the same face shape. "Come in," he finally said, when she stopped before him, soaked and exhausted. In the silence of the mansion, as the storm raged outside, two distant worlds finally collided. The millionaire stared at the one who might be his daughter, trying to process the revelation, when he noticed something else in the girl's frightened gaze, something beyond fear and beyond exhaustion. "Is there something else you need to tell me?" he questioned, noticing how she protected her belly with her hands. Tears flooded the child's eyes again as she replied, in a voice as fragile as a whisper, "They said I'm pregnant, and they want to get rid of me. And the baby." The millionaire's expression hardened. At that instant, something dormant for years awakened in his chest, a protective instinct that he didn't even know he possessed. The millionaire watched the girl sleeping on the library couch. After the initial shock of the revelation, he had led her inside, offered dry towels, and prepared hot soup, mechanical gestures that disguised the storm of emotions within him. The child had devoured the meal with an avidity that betrayed days of hunger before succumbing to exhaustion. While she slept, he examined the locket that now rested in his palm, the object identical to the one he gave to the woman he abandoned years ago. There was no doubt that the girl was telling the truth about her origin, but that didn't mean he was ready to accept her. It's just a terrible coincidence, he murmured to himself, walking to the window to observe the storm lashing. The gardens. The phone rang, breaking the silence. It was his lawyer, responding to the urgent message he had sent moments before. "A complicated situation, no doubt," commented the voice on the other end of the line, after hearing the superficial account of the facts. "I suggest you contact social services immediately. There are protocols for these cases. A pregnant minor, possibly a victim of abuse without a legal guardian. And that would take her where?" interrupted the millionaire. "To foster care, of course. Maybe a temporary home while they investigate the case." The millionaire remembered the stories. He heard about those institutions. He knew that places like that rarely offered adequate care, especially for complex cases like the girl's. And if she's... He hesitated, unable to pronounce the word daughter. "My relative?" A silence on the other end of the line. "That would change things, but we'd need legal proof. A DNA test, appropriate documentation. Until then, the protocol remains the same." After hanging up, the millionaire stared again at the sleeping child. He held in his hands the power to change that life, but that would mean confronting his biggest mistake, taking on a responsibility he had fled for all these years, exposing himself to public judgment. "I can't do this," he decided, returning to the office to make another call. "The system will take care of her better than I could." Hours later, when the girl awoke, she found the millionaire sitting in a nearby armchair, watching her with an unreadable expression. "How do you feel?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral, distant. "Better," she replied, adjusting herself timidly on the couch. "Thank you for the food, and for letting me in." A heavy silence hung between them, interrupted only by the sound of the rain on the windows. "I contacted the authorities," announced the millionaire finally. "They'll come to pick you up tomorrow morning." The girl's eyes widened in panic. "No! Please, they'll send me back, or worse, you'll be safe. There are specialized places for cases like yours." "My mother said you would protect me," she protested, tears streaming down her cheeks. "She trusted you." The words hit the millionaire like a physical blow. "Your mother was wrong. I'm not the kind of man who takes care of children. I have a life, business, responsibilities." "Then why did she give me this?" questioned the girl, pointing to the locket that was now on the coffee table. "Why did she say your name before she died?" The millionaire stood up abruptly, unable to sustain that accusing gaze, so similar to that of the woman he abandoned. "I don't know what she expected, but I can't be what you need." "You're my father, aren't you?" whispered the girl. The question hung in the air like smoke. The millionaire turned his back, unable to face that truth. "I'll prepare a room for you to spend the night. Tomorrow social services will find a suitable place." As he walked away, he heard the child's stifled sobs. Each step towards the door was like walking on broken glass. In the hallway, away from her eyes, he allowed himself a moment of weakness, resting his forehead against the cold wall. "I can't do this," he repeated to himself. "I don't know how to be a father. I never have." That night, the millionaire couldn't sleep. He walked through the silent hallways of the mansion until he stopped before the door of the room where he had accommodated the girl. Through the crack, he saw her sleeping restlessly, muttering disjointed words, pleading in her dreams not to be taken away. It was then that he noticed something he hadn't noticed before, the small hand resting protectively on her still, flat belly. A child forced to grow up too fast, carrying a life when she had barely begun her own. Something broke inside him, maybe the last piece of the armor he had built around his heart. The morning arrived with the sound of rain still drumming on the windows. The millionaire hadn't slept a wink all night. His brain divided between the impulse to maintain the emotional distance cultivated for years and the uncomfortable feeling of responsibility that grew with each passing minute. When the first rays of sun tried to break through the grey clouds, he was already on the phone again with his lawyer. "I need alternatives," he demanded, his voice betraying the sleepless night. "There must be a way to ensure her safety without involvement from the public system." "There is a temporary option," replied the lawyer after a long silence. "We can register a temporary guardianship while we investigate the relatives who mistreated her and conduct the paternity test, but that would require your personal commitment, something you've always avoided." The millionaire watched from his office window. In the garden, to his surprise, the girl walked slowly among the rain-soaked flowers, as if exploring a new and unknown world. "How long would it take to get this guardianship? With your influence? A few days, maybe a week. We'd need to convince a judge that there's sufficient evidence of kinship and that you offer a safe environment." "Do it," decided the millionaire, without taking his eyes off the small figure in the garden, "and postpone the visit from social services. Say, I need time to gather relevant information about the case." After hanging up, he went to the garden. The girl knelt before a bed of white roses, touching the delicate petals gently with her fingertips. "My mother loved flowers," she commented when she noticed his presence. She said they were smiles from the earth. Something in the simplicity of that phrase disarmed the millionaire. "She always had a poetic way of seeing the world," he replied, surprising himself by the shared memory. The girl turned to face him. "So you really knew her well?" It wasn't a question, but a statement. The millionaire felt the weight of those words and, for the first time, allowed himself to truly look at the child before him, not as a problem to be solved, but as a person with history, fears, and hopes. "Come," he said, hesitantly extending his hand. "We need to talk." In the kitchen, while preparing a simple breakfast, something he hadn't done in years, always relying on the domestic staff, the millionaire listened to the full story. The girl spoke about her mother's death from a prolonged illness, about the relatives who took her in out of interest in the small government check they would receive, about the abuse that started subtly and intensified over time. "When I started feeling sick every morning, they took me to the clinic. The doctor talked to my uncle first, then examined me. He wrote something on a paper and gave it to him. That's when everything got worse." The millionaire gripped the handle of the frying pan tightly, controlling the anger that grew. "He said I was pregnant," she continued, her voice breaking. "He shouted that I was just like my mother, a disgrace. He said he knew how to get rid of the problem, that he knew people who would make it disappear." The millionaire's expression hardened. "And that's when you decided to run away?" She nodded, hugging herself. "I remembered what my mother had said about the locket, about looking for you if I ever really needed help. She always said that despite everything, you were a good man inside." The words hit him like ice water, washing away the last layers of indifference he was trying to maintain. "I won't let them take you back to that house," he declared, placing a plate of eggs and toast in front of the girl. "And I also won't allow social services to put you in a system that fails so many children." Her eyes widened, a mixture of hope and distrust. "What does that mean?" "It means I need time to resolve this situation legally. In the meantime, you'll stay here, under my protection." That afternoon, while the girl rested, the millionaire received a visit from a trusted doctor. The confirmation of the pregnancy came accompanied by an even more disturbing revelation. "Based on the fetal development and considering her age, this clearly constitutes a case of abuse," explained the doctor, putting away the portable ultrasound equipment. "We need to notify the authorities." "I'm already taking care of that part," assured the millionaire. "What worries me now is her health. A pregnancy at this age is extremely risky. The next few weeks will be crucial to assess the risks and options." After the doctor left, the millionaire found the girl awake, huddled on the edge of the bed. "You heard everything, didn't you?" he asked, noting her red eyes. She nodded. Are they going to take the baby away from me? The question, laden with fear and a strange maternal protection that seemed disproportionate for someone so young, made the millionaire sit next to her on the bed. No one will do anything you don't want, he promised, but we need to consider what's safest for your health. Why are you helping me now? She asked suddenly. Yesterday, you wanted to send me away. The millionaire hesitated, searching for the right words. Because I'm finally seeing beyond what I want to see. I'm seeing you. 3 days had passed since the girl arrived at the mansion. The millionaire had reorganized his schedule, canceling important meetings and delegating decisions that he would normally make personally. The buzz in the company hallways grew. Never in 16 years had he altered his work routine for personal reasons. What's happening to him? The employees whispered to each other, while the assistant maintained her usual professional posture, protecting her boss's privacy. In the mansion, an unlikely routine began to establish itself. The millionaire hired a doctor specializing in high-risk pregnancies and a child psychologist, both under strict confidentiality agreements. The guest room had been transformed into a more welcoming space, with books and some decorative elements in soft tones. That afternoon, while analyzing documents sent by the lawyer in the mansion office, the millionaire was surprised by the girl's silent presence at the door. "Can I come in?" she asked, still hesitant, as if constantly testing the limits of this strange arrangement. "Of course," he replied, indicating an armchair near his desk. She crossed the room with light steps, stopping to examine the bookshelves filled with books. "Do you like to read a lot?" "Yes," he confirmed, watching how her small fingers slid delicately over the spines. "Do you too?" A shy smile appeared on the girl's lips. "My mother taught me when she had the strength. After she got sick, I read to her. Those were the moments when she seemed to forget the pain." The millionaire felt a pang in his chest. The image of the woman he abandoned, sick and being comforted by her young daughter, formed vividly in his mind. "What was her favorite book?" he asked, trying to control the emotion in his voice. The girl pulled a thin volume with a faded blue cover from the backpack she still carried everywhere, as if fearing that her few belongings might disappear. "This one. She read it so much that the pages are coming loose." The millionaire immediately recognized the book of poetry he had given to the girl's mother when they were still dating. On the first page, a dedication written in his own handwriting, now more mature, so that our mornings always begin with verses of hope. His eyes met the girl's, and at that instant, something silent was shared, the mutual recognition of a loss, of a bond that transcended the circumstances of the present. "She never spoke badly of you," commented the girl, carefully putting the book back in her backpack. "Even when I asked why you weren't with us, she said some people need more time to understand love." The words hit the millionaire like a physical blow, disarming the last defenses he maintained. The woman he abandoned hadn't fueled resentment in her daughter. On the contrary, she preserved an image of hope. "She was better than I'll ever be," he admitted, his voice choked. "It's not too late to try," replied the girl with a wisdom that seemed disproportionate to her age. That night, during the simple dinner they shared in the kitchen, the millionaire had dismissed the domestic staff to preserve the privacy of the situation. The phone rang. It was the lawyer, with news about the temporary guardianship process. "The judge accepted our initial petition, but there are complications," he informed. "The girl's relatives filed a missing person report. They're alleging kidnapping." "They have the audacity too." The millionaire controlled his anger upon realizing the girl's attentive gaze. "I understand. And what about the other matter we discussed?" "The investigation into the abuse is ongoing, but we'll need a formal statement from her. And there's an additional problem. The discovery of the pregnancy has attracted unwanted attention." A reporter contacted my office asking questions about a supposed pregnant girl under your protection. The millionaire felt his blood run cold. Keep everything under control. I'll increase security on the property. After hanging up, he found the girl watching him with apprehension. Are they going to take me away? No, he assured, with a conviction that surprised them both. I won't allow it. Later, as he accompanied her to her room, he noticed how she moved carefully, a hand always resting on her belly. Are you feeling something? He asked, concerned. The doctor said it's normal to have some discomfort, she replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. But sometimes I'm afraid of what's going to happen. The millionaire hesitated before sitting next to her. I'm afraid too. The sincere confession seemed to surprise the girl. You? But you always seem so sure of everything. Seeming isn't the same as being, he replied with a sad smile. I've spent my whole life building walls around myself to protect myself. And now I realize that those same walls prevented me from doing the only thing that really mattered, being present when you and your mother needed me. Miru's silent tears streamed down the girl's face. Impulsively, the millionaire took a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped them delicately. It was the first real physical contact between them, a simple gesture that broke down another invisible barrier. I don't know if I can fix all the mistakes I've made, he continued, but I promise I won't run away anymore. I'll be here, no matter what happens. That night, when he left her sleeping, the millionaire returned to his office with a new determination. On the table, he spread out all the documents related to the case, medical reports, legal petitions, preliminary investigations into the abusive relatives. I'll protect her, he vowed to the silence of the night, even if it means facing the whole world. The dawn of the seventh day brought with it the inevitable storm. The millionaire watched from his office window as the first news vans parked on the edge of his property. The lawyer's phone call the night before had prepared him for this, but the reality was even more invasive than he had imagined. They got the information, the lawyer had explained. Someone from the hospital leaked details about the girl and her possible connection to you. The press found her family, who are fueling the story with their own versions. On the security monitor, the millionaire watched the growing number of journalists and onlookers gathering beyond the gates. The sensational headlines were already circulating on the internet. Millionaire keeps pregnant girl in mansion. Scandal, businessman accused of child abuse. Kidnapping or rescue. The mystery of the missing child. Don't let her see this. He instructed the head of security through the intercom. Reinforce the perimeter and don't allow anyone to enter without my express authorization. In the living room, the girl hugged her knees to her chest, huddled on the couch while the shouts of the reporters became audible even through the thick walls of the mansion. Her pale face reflected the fear she was trying to hide. Have they come to take me away? She asked when the millionaire entered the room. No, he replied, sitting next to her. But it's time to do something I've been putting off. The millionaire took a deep breath, gathering courage for the words that would change everything. During the week they spent together, the initial suspicions had solidified. Every gesture, every expression of the girl echoed memories of the woman he once loved. The DNA test would only be a confirmation of what his heart already knew. I need to tell you the whole truth, he began, choosing his words carefully. 16 years ago, I met your mother. She worked at one of my companies, at the time just a small startup. She was brilliant, determined, full of dreams. The girl listened with absolute attention, as if she were finally assembling the pieces of a puzzle she had carried her whole life. We fell in love, against all expectations. Me, focused only on the ambition to build an empire. Her, with plans to change the world through education. We were different, but we completed each other. His voice faltered momentarily. When she told me about the pregnancy, I panicked. At that time, I was negotiating the sale of the company to a conservative group. A personal scandal could ruin everything. I offered money. I offered an apartment away from the city. But I never offered what she really needed: my presence, my support, my love. The tears finally escaped after years of being contained. She refused my material offers and disappeared. I tried to find her months later when I finally realized my mistake, but it was too late. I was informed that she had moved to the countryside, started a new life. The millionaire wiped his face with the back of his hand, an unusual gesture for someone always so controlled. I never knew that she had had the child, that you existed. I believed that she had decided not to continue with the pregnancy. The revelation hung in the air between them, heavy as lead and light as a liberation. "You're my father," stated the girl, not as a question, but as the recognition of a truth long suspected. "Yes," he confirmed, his voice choked. "I'm your biological father, although I've never deserved that title, and now that I know this, I'll do everything in my power to protect you." The girl reached out hesitantly, touching the face of the man she now recognized as her father. "She always said you'd come back when you were ready." That innocent touch broke down the last barriers. The millionaire hugged his daughter for the first time, an awkward hug, laden with regret and silent promises. The moment was interrupted by the shrill sound of the phone. It was the lawyer again, his voice laden with urgency. "The situation is complicated. The family is alleging that you manipulated the girl, that you invented this whole paternity story to cover up something worse. And there's more. They got a preliminary court order for her to be handed over to a state-run shelter until everything is clarified." "When?" asked the millionaire, feeling the blood run cold in his veins. "The bailiffs are on their way. They'll be there in less than an hour." Hanging up the phone, he found the girl watching him with wide, fearful eyes. She had heard enough to understand. "They're going to take me away from here, aren't they?" she whispered. The millionaire knelt before her, holding her small hands in his. A desperate idea began to form in his mind, risky, controversial, but perhaps the only immediate way out. "Listen carefully," he said with an intensity that surprised them both. "There's a way to prevent them from taking you away, at least temporarily. It's a legal maneuver, unconventional, but it would give us time until the DNA test proves our kinship." What?" she asked, clinging to that last hope. "A symbolic ceremony," he explained, choosing his words carefully. "Legally, it would appear to be a marriage, but it wouldn't be real. Just a temporary document that would give me legal authority over you while we fight for recognition of paternity." The girl frowned, confused by the complex concept. "Like a fake marriage." "Exactly. Only on paper, only for enough time to protect you. It's something that's sometimes done in extreme situations, when the law offers no other immediate options." "Dean," as he explained the plan, the millionaire realized how desperate he sounded. But the alternative, seeing the daughter he had just found being taken into an impersonal, vulnerable, and potentially dangerous system in her state, was simply unacceptable. "It would only be temporary," he reinforced, "and totally symbolic. As soon as the court recognizes that I'm your father, everything will be annulled, and I'll legally assume my responsibility as your guardian." Understanding gradually lit up the girl's face. "Like a promise that you won't abandon me again." "Yes," he agreed, impressed with her perception. "Exactly that. A legal promise that no one can break." At that moment, the sirens of official cars could be heard approaching through the property gates. Time was running out. "Do you trust me?" asked the millionaire, aware of the irony of those words coming from someone who had failed so completely. In the past, to his surprise, the girl nodded without hesitation. "Mom trusted you, and I trust you too." The news exploded like a bomb. Millionaire holds ceremony with pregnant child, the headlines screamed, distorting a desperate measure of protection into something sinister and repulsive. In a matter of hours, social media was swarming with opinions, condemnations, and conspiracy theories. In front of the mansion, the number of reporters and onlookers multiplied with each passing hour. Some protesters held signs with hate messages demanding immediate justice, without knowing the true details of the situation. Inside the fortress that his home had become, the millionaire watched the chaos through the security cameras. The legal strategy had worked temporarily. The court order had been suspended while the judge analyzed the unusual situation, but the victory came at a high price. His reputation, built meticulously over decades, crumbled with each new sensational news. Report: the company's stock has fallen 20% since yesterday, informed the assistant over the phone, her professional voice masking any personal judgment. The board is demanding an emergency meeting, and 3 of the largest partners have suspended pending contracts. Inform the board that I'll be available by video conference tomorrow, replied the millionaire. As for the partners, tell them that I understand their concerns, but that everything will be clarified soon. Hanging up, he noticed the girl standing in the doorway of the office, hugging the locket to her chest like a protective talisman. "I'm ruining your life," she whispered, her eyes filled with tears. "Maybe it would be better if I had gone to the shelter." The millionaire crossed the room quickly, kneeling before her. "Never say that again. None of this is your fault. These are consequences of my choices, not just the recent ones, but mainly those of 16 years ago." In the living room, the television broadcast a debate show where experts discussed the case without knowing the real facts. A renowned psychologist diagnosed from a distance the mental illness that would lead a powerful man to such behavior. A famous lawyer demanded exemplary punishment. A former business rival gave testimony about the millionaire's dubious character. "Turn that off," ordered the millionaire to the security guard, realizing how each word affected the girl. "And block all news channels on the TVs in the house." That afternoon, they met in the office with the lawyer and the doctor who was monitoring the case. The preliminary results of the DNA test had arrived, confirming what they already knew. The probability of paternity was greater than 99.9%. "This changes everything," declared the lawyer, visibly relieved. "We can file the petition for permanent guardianship immediately. The ceremony can be annulled without additional complications, since it never had real validity." "What about the family that mistreated her?" questioned the millionaire, the anger evident in his restrained voice. "The investigation is progressing rapidly. They found physical evidence in the house that corroborates the abuse. The main suspect in the pregnancy is the older cousin, who already has a history of similar crimes. He's disappeared since the girl ran away, which strengthens the suspicions." The doctor intervened, his expression worried. "We need to discuss the situation of the pregnancy. The exams show that it's more advanced than we initially thought, approximately at the end of the first trimester. Considering the patient's age and physical structure, the risks are extraordinarily high." Silence weighed in the room. Finally, the lawyer asked what everyone was thinking. "What are the options?" "Legally, given the circumstance of statutory rape and the health risks, termination is a possibility supported by law," explained the doctor. "But the decision would need to be quick, as each week increases the risks of any procedure." The millionaire felt the weight of that impossible decision. And if she decides to continue, it would be classified as a very high-risk pregnancy. It would require constant monitoring, possible hospitalization in the final stages, and still, there are no guarantees that— The doctor hesitated, that both would survive childbirth. When the professionals left, the millionaire found His daughter in the indoor garden, sitting under an ornamental tree, absent-mindedly caressing her belly. The scene broke his heart, a child forced to face decisions that many adults would never need to consider. "You were talking about the baby, weren't you?" she asked when he approached. "About how dangerous it is for me." "Yes," he confirmed, sitting next to her. "The doctor explained some options that we need to consider." "I don't want them to take him away from me," she declared suddenly, her voice choked but determined. "I know it's wrong, that it shouldn't have happened like this, but it's not his fault." The millionaire took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Your health is the most important thing now. You're still very young. Your body isn't prepared for a pregnancy." "I know," she replied, surprising him with her maturity. "I'm scared, very scared, but I'm also afraid of making the wrong choice and regretting it forever." "Whatever decision you make, I'll be by your side," he promised. "You're not alone in this." The girl looked up, revealing a vulnerability that contradicted her strong words. "If I decide not to continue, will you still want me as a daughter?" The question hit the millionaire like a physical blow, revealing how deep the insecurities were in the child who had just found a father. "Nothing in the world could change the fact that you're my daughter. Nothing." That night, a violent storm broke over the city, as if the sky itself shared in the emotional turbulence within the mansion. The millionaire walked through the dark hallways when he heard a muffled scream coming from his daughter's room. He ran, finding her sitting on the bed, hugging her belly with an expression of intense pain. "What's happening?" he asked, terrified. "It hurts," she sobbed, "very badly, and there's blood." Panic took over the millionaire when he saw the red stains on the sheets. He picked up the girl in his arms without hesitation and ran to the garage. In minutes, he was driving at high speed through the storm, ignoring the photographers who were trying to follow him. At the hospital, doctors and nurses moved quickly around the stretcher, where the girl groaned in pain. The millionaire was forced to wait outside the emergency room, his heart racing, his hands trembling. "Please," he whispered repeatedly, like a prayer to whoever might be listening, "don't take her away from me. I just found her." Hours later, a tired-looking doctor approached. "The bleeding has been contained," she informed. But she suffered a miscarriage. Her body rejected the pregnancy, which, given the circumstances, was probably the best that could happen medically. "And how is she?" asked the millionaire, his voice choked. "Physically, she'll recover completely. Emotionally..." The doctor hesitated. "She's going to need you a lot." When he was finally able to enter the room, he found his daughter pale against the hospital pillows, looking even smaller and more fragile under the cold lights. Silent tears streamed down her face as she stared blankly at the ceiling. "I'm here," said the millionaire, holding her small hand in his, "and I'm not going anywhere." The girl turned her face slowly to look at him. "He's gone," she whispered. "I should be sad, but I feel relief. Does that make me a terrible person?" "No," he replied, feeling tears burn his own eyes. "That makes you a child who should never have gone through this in the first place. None of this was your choice or your fault." Outside, beyond the hospital windows, the flashes of cameras illuminated the stormy night. The world continued to judge, to speculate, to condemn. But inside that room, father and daughter were beginning to build something that no external judgment could destroy. A family, imperfect and belated, born of pain, but grounded in something that both had sought. Throughout their lives, belonging. 2 weeks had passed since the night of the storm. The outside world was still in a frenzy, but inside the mansion, a new kind of silence had settled in. Not the cold silence of loneliness that once dominated those walls, but a shared silence, full of mutual understanding. The millionaire watched his daughter sitting on the garden bench, sketching drawings in a notebook that he had bought a few days before. His instincts were sharp, carefully gauging her needs without suffocating her, giving space for the silent grief that she processed in her own way. The official DNA test has been included in the proceedings, informed the lawyer, who now visited the mansion almost daily. The judge has scheduled the hearing for next week. It's practically certain that permanent guardianship will be granted to you, especially after the revelations about the previous family. The investigations had progressed rapidly. The girl's cousin, responsible for the abuse, had been located, trying to flee the country, and now faced serious charges. The aunt and uncle, who should have protected the child, would also answer for negligence and mistreatment. "And what about the other situation?" asked the millionaire, referring to the fake ceremony that had shocked the country. "Officially annulled," confirmed the lawyer. "Registered as it was under the false pretense of medical urgency, it has no legal validity whatsoever. But the damage to your public image, I don't care about that now," interrupted the millionaire without taking his eyes off his daughter in the garden. "Companies recover, reputations rebuild. She wouldn't have had a second chance if I hadn't acted." That afternoon, when they were in the library, he reviewing documents she absorbed in a book of short stories, the girl broke the comfortable silence they shared. "Can I ask you a question?" "Anything," he replied, putting the papers aside. "When all this is over, when the judge says I can stay with you forever, what's going to happen?" The simplicity of the question hid layers of insecurity. The millionaire realized that beyond the immediate drama they were living, there was an entire future to be considered, a future for which neither of them was prepared. "Well, legally you'll be my daughter," he began, choosing his words carefully. "We'll live together, of course. You'll need to study. We can find a good school when you're ready, or hire private tutors initially if you prefer." "And are people going to keep talking about us?" she asked, the worry evident in her voice. "For a while," he admitted, opting for honesty. "But other scandals will come, other stories will take over the news. People have short memories for what doesn't affect them directly." The girl nodded, processing the information. "And the company? I heard you on the phone, talking about problems?" The millionaire smiled, surprised by her perception. "Companies are like living organisms. They adapt to circumstances. Maybe we'll lose some contracts. Maybe I'll need to step aside temporarily from the presidency. But I've built something solid enough to survive an image crisis." "Because of me," she stated, her face falling. "No," he corrected firmly, "because of my choices, and they were the best choices I've ever made in my life." That night, while the millionaire was organizing some documents in the office, he was surprised by his personal assistant, who had come to the mansion for the first time since the beginning of the crisis. "The board is divided," she informed, maintaining her usual professionalism. "Half demand your immediate removal, citing moral clauses in the bylaws. The other half argue that you should remain, arguing that no one knows the company better than its founder." "And you?" asked the millionaire, curious about the opinion of someone who had worked alongside him for more than a decade. "What do you think of all this?" The assistant allowed herself a rare moment of hesitation. "I've worked with you for 12 years. I've never seen you make a decision without meticulously calculating every consequence, every variable, until now. And that makes it a mistake?" "On the contrary," she replied with a small smile. "It makes you human." Finally, before leaving, the assistant left a folder on the table that wasn't expected. "Some ideas I've developed in recent weeks. A restructuring of the communications department, a public relations plan focused on social responsibility, and an outline For a new foundation. The millionaire opened the folder, intrigued, finding the detailed project of a non-profit organization dedicated to children and adolescents who are victims of abuse, with special emphasis on childhood and teenage pregnancy. New Dawn Foundation. He read aloud the title of the project. "I thought you might want to turn this experience into something bigger," commented the assistant before leaving. "Something that could help other girls like your daughter." Alone. Again, the millionaire leafed through the project with growing interest. The idea resonated perfectly with the thoughts that had been occupying his mind in recent days. Maybe there was a greater purpose emerging from all that pain, not just personal redemption, but an opportunity to change the lives of other vulnerable children. The next morning, during breakfast, the millionaire noticed something different in his daughter. A subtle glow had returned to her eyes, a small spark of life that had been absent since the night of the storm. "I had a dream about Mom," she said, spreading jelly on her toast. She was smiling, saying she was proud of me and of you too. The millionaire felt the emotion tighten his throat. "I wish I had had the chance to ask her for forgiveness." "She had already forgiven you," replied the girl with surprising certainty. "Otherwise, she would never have given me the locket with your name on it." Later, while walking through the garden, a routine they had established in recent days, the millionaire shared the foundation project, carefully observing his daughter's reaction. "We could transform part of this mansion into a shelter," he explained. "Create a safe space with doctors, psychologists, teachers, a place where other girls can find help before it's too late." To his surprise, the child's eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm for the first time since they met. "I could help," she suggested timidly. "I know what it's like to be afraid and not have anyone to talk to." At that moment, something changed fundamentally in the relationship between them. They were no longer just a father and a daughter trying to reconnect, but partners in a shared purpose, a mission that transcended their individual stories. "We'll start as soon as the hearing is over," promised the millionaire, surprised by his own enthusiasm. That night, before falling asleep, the girl asked for something she had never asked for before. "Can you stay here until I fall asleep?" The millionaire sat on the edge of the bed, not knowing exactly what to do. After a moment of hesitation, he began to tell stories about her mother, small moments, preserved memories that could now finally be shared. The girl listened with her eyes closed, a slight smile on her lips, while her father's voice wove the past that she had never fully known. When she finally fell asleep, the millionaire remained there, watching the serene face that carried traits of both him and the woman he had loved. He realized that at some point during those turbulent weeks, something fundamental had changed. Within him, the cold, calculating man who had built an empire at the cost of his humanity was giving way to someone new, someone capable of feeling, of caring, of putting someone else above any material interest. "Thank you," he whispered to the silence of the room, a gratitude directed both at his sleeping daughter and at the woman who could never hear his apologies. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." The day of the hearing dawned clear and fresh, as if the universe itself conspired to mark the beginning of a new chapter. In the girl's room, the millionaire clumsily adjusted the ribbon in her hair, a simple gesture of fatherhood that still seemed strange to him, but increasingly natural. "Are you nervous?" he asked, noticing how she clutched the locket between her fingers. "A little," she admitted. "What if the judge doesn't believe us?" "We have all the evidence on our side," he assured. "The DNA test, the medical reports about the abuse you suffered, the investigations into your former guardians. Besides, we have the truth, and it has a weight that no lie can bear for long." The journey to the courthouse was tense. Despite the tinted windows of the limousine, They could see the crowd of reporters and onlookers gathered at the entrance of the building. The case had captured national attention, fueled by conspiracy theories and half-truths. "Keep your head up," instructed the millionaire, holding his daughter's hand firmly as they walked through the corridor of flashes and microphones. "We owe these people nothing." In the courtroom, the contrast couldn't be more evident. On one side, the millionaire and his daughter, accompanied by a team of elite lawyers and medical experts. On the other, the girl's former guardians, ordinary-looking figures, but whose eyes revealed the coldness that the child had known so well. "Family Court, case number 47298, announced the clerk. "Hearing for determination of legal guardianship of the minor." The judge, a middle-aged man with piercing eyes, studied the documents before him before beginning the proceedings. The girl squeezed her father's hand when the first testimony was requested. Hers, with a voice initially shaky, but gaining firmness with each word. She recounted the years of neglect after her mother's death, the physical and psychological abuse, and finally, the horror of discovering the pregnancy and the threat of being sent away. "And what led you to specifically seek out Mr.?" asked the judge, referring to the millionaire by name. "My mother left a locket with instructions to look for him if I ever really needed help," she replied, showing the object that never left, her neck. She said that despite everything, he had a good heart. A murmur ran through the room. The family's lawyer tried to insinuate that the story had been fabricated, that the millionaire had manipulated the vulnerable child. "And why would we believe that this bizarre ceremony was just a desperate legal strategy?" he questioned harshly. "Wouldn't it be more plausible that the defendant was in fact trying to legitimize an improper relationship with the minor?" The millionaire felt his blood boil, but maintained his composure when the judge allowed him to respond. "Your Honor, I am the first to admit that the strategy adopted was extreme and, viewed from the outside, disturbing. But I faced an impossible choice: allow my newly discovered daughter to be returned to an abusive environment or handed over to an overburdened foster care system that could not guarantee her safety. I did what any desperate father would do. I used all the resources at my disposal to protect her." The tension in the room was palpable as the millionaire continued his testimony, detailing how he had abandoned the pregnant woman years ago, how he had never known of his daughter's existence, and how, upon discovering her, he felt an overwhelming responsibility to make up for all the lost years. "I made the worst mistake of my life 16 years ago when I chose my ambition above love and responsibility. I can't recover those years, but I can guarantee that this child will never feel abandonment or fear again as long as I live." One by one, the experts presented their evidence. The medical examiner confirmed the signs of prolonged physical abuse on the girl's body. The child psychologist testified about the healthy bond that was already forming between father and daughter. The investigator detailed the evidence collected at the aunt and uncle's house, including disturbing records of communications related to the solution for the unwanted pregnancy. When the last testimony was concluded, the judge requested a recess to deliberate. In the hallway, away from the eyes of the press, the millionaire hugged his daughter, who was trembling slightly. "Everything will be okay," he whispered, wishing he believed his own words. "What if he decides against us?" she asked, the fear evident in her voice. "Then we'll appeal, and we'll keep appealing. I'll fight for you in every court in this country if necessary." The return to the room was marked by a sepulchral silence. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked directly at the girl before speaking. "In my 30 years on the bench, few cases have been as complex as this one," he began. "Not only because of the facts presented, but because of the media exposure that has already condemned and acquitted those involved 1,000 times without knowing all the evidence. The millionaire felt his daughter's hand squeeze his tightly. Having thoroughly analyzed all the evidence, reports and testimonies, it is my decision that permanent guardianship of the minor be granted to her biological father. A wave of exclamations ran through the room, promptly silenced by the judge's gavel. Additionally, I determined that the so-called ceremony previously performed be officially annulled and removed from all records, recognizing that, although questionable in its execution, it was motivated by genuine paternal desperation, not by any improper intention. Silent tears streamed down the girl's face as the judge continued, ordering the pre-trial detention of the cousin accused of abuse, the continued investigation of the aunt and uncle for criminal negligence, and establishing a program of psychological counseling for the child. Finally, concluded the magistrate, I would like to speak directly to the minor involved. The girl looked up, surprised by the direct attention. Young lady, you have demonstrated extraordinary courage in facing all these challenges. I sincerely hope that from today onward, your life will be marked only by experiences that a child should have: safety, education, play, and above all, unconditional love. As they left the courthouse, they were greeted by an even larger crowd of reporters and onlookers. But something had changed. Mixed with the cries of indignation and incessant flashes, there were people holding signs of support, some with messages for the girl. You are brave. We are with you. Your story inspired many. What happened? Asked the girl, confused by the change in tone. The truth has begun to spread, explained the lawyer, walking beside them. Some more ethical journalists investigated thoroughly and published reports about the abuse you suffered, about how your father rescued you from an impossible situation. In the limousine, father and daughter were finally able to breathe. The legal battle was over, but both knew that the road ahead would still be challenging. Emotional recovery, adaptation to a new life, reconstruction of their individual and joint identities. Where are we going now? She asked, the weariness evident in her young voice. Home, replied the millionaire, the word carrying a meaning it had never had before on his lips. And then, when you're ready, we can start building that foundation. We discussed. A small smile lit up the girl's face. To help other children like me. Exactly. To transform our pain into something bigger than ourselves. As the car pulled away from the courthouse, the press helicopters still circled above, capturing images that would soon be splashed across the country. But within that protected space, a small family, imperfect, wounded but determined, began to heal, united not only by blood, but by a conscious choice to stay together despite everything. A year had passed since the hearing that had changed their lives. The mansion on the hill, once a monument to solitude and isolation, now pulsed with a different energy. Half of the grounds had been transformed into the first shelter of the new Dawn Foundation, with medical, psychological, and educational wings, specially designed for children and adolescents who are victims of abuse. It was a Sunday afternoon when the millionaire watched, through the window of his office, the garden where his daughter was leading a small group of girls in a planting activity. At 10 years old, she still carried the invisible scars of the past, but each day brought new signs of healing. The nightmares that had plagued her in the early months had gradually diminished. The prolonged silences gave way to increasingly animated conversations. The trust, so brutally destroyed, rebuilt itself patiently. They adore her, commented the director of the center, a renowned child psychologist who had abandoned a promising academic career to lead the project. There's something about someone who's been through the fire and survived that inspires others to believe in their own survival. The millionaire nodded, watching as his daughter patiently explained to an even smaller girl how to properly plant sunflower seeds. Sometimes I wonder who's helping whom. "That's how true healing works," replied the director. "When we transform our pain into purpose, both sides benefit." Later that day, father and daughter followed their ritual of walking through the private garden they maintained on the other side of the property. It was a space just for them, separated from the foundation's facilities by a hedge of flowering shrubs. In the center of this garden, a special bed of white roses, their mother's favorite, grew vigorously. "Tomorrow is her birthday," commented the girl, kneeling to pull a weed that threatened the roses. "It's been 2 years since she passed away." "Would you like to do something special?" asked the millionaire, still learning to navigate the significant dates, the shared memories that he hadn't experienced. "I thought I'd take some of these roses to the cemetery, and maybe you could tell me more stories about when you first met." The millionaire sat on the stone bench, feeling the bittersweet weight of memory. Over the past year, he had gradually shared small fragments of the past, how he had met her mother, the happy moments they had lived, their shared dreams before fear and ambition destroyed everything. "Did you know that she loved to sing?" he commented, observing the surprise in his daughter's eyes. "She had a beautiful voice, although she never believed it when I said that. On Sunday mornings, she would make coffee while humming old songs. She said they were the same ones her grandmother sang." The girl smiled, eagerly absorbing each new detail about the mother she had lost too soon. "I remember her singing to me when I was very little. I don't remember the songs, just the feeling of security." A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind of silence that only exists between people who don't need to fill every moment with words. "I received a letter from the school today," said the girl finally, changing the subject. "The principal thinks I'm ready to go back to regular classes next semester." The millionaire felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. After the trauma she had experienced, his daughter had studied at home with private tutors, in parallel with therapy sessions and gradual involvement with the foundation's activities. The possibility of returning to school represented a huge step in her recovery. "How do you feel about it?" he asked, resisting the protective impulse to suggest more preparation time. "A little scared," she admitted, distractedly plucking petals from a fallen rose. "But also excited. I want to be normal again, or maybe normal for the first time." "You know you don't have to do it if you don't feel ready." The girl looked up, revealing a determination that reminded him so much of her mother that the millionaire felt his heart clench. "But I want to do it. I can't let fear decide my life forever." That night, after the dinner that they now shared regularly, a simple meal prepared by both as part of the new family routine, the millionaire found his daughter in the old secret room, now transformed into a memorial for her mother. Recovered photographs, personal objects located with the help of old acquaintances, and in the center, the book of poetry that she valued so much. "I was thinking," began the girl, carefully leafing through the worn book, "when the foundation completes 1 year next month, we could do something special in her memory." "What kind of thing?" "A scholarship in her name, for girls who want to become teachers like she dreamed of being." The millionaire felt a wave of pride so intense that it momentarily left him speechless. The daughter he had found in such tragic circumstances showed a capacity to transform pain into contribution that many adults never developed throughout their entire lives. "That's a magnificent idea," he finally managed to reply. "Let's start working on it tomorrow." Later, as he accompanied her to her room for the nightly goodbye ritual, he realized how the small, everyday gestures had become precious to both. The good night, always accompanied by a hesitant hug at the beginning, now natural and comfortable. The checking of the windows, the nightlight always on. Small guarantees of safety for a child who had known fear in its rawest form. "Dad," she called when he was about to leave the room. The word still new on her lips, still laden with renewed meaning each time it was used. "Yes? Do you think she's proud of us? Of how we're trying to fix things?" The millionaire felt the emotion catch in his throat. "I'm absolutely sure she is." The next morning, they drove together to the small cemetery on the outskirts of the city. Without prior announcement, without security guards, just a father and a daughter carrying a bouquet of freshly cut white roses. Before the simple headstone, they remained in respectful silence. The girl carefully placed the flowers, arranging them with meticulous attention. The millionaire, after a moment of hesitation, knelt beside his daughter. As the car pulled away from the courthouse, the press helicopters still circled above, capturing images that would soon be splashed across the country. But within that protected space, a small family, imperfect, wounded, but determined, began to heal, united not only by blood, but by a conscious choice to stay together despite everything. A year had passed since the hearing that had changed their lives. The mansion on the hill, once a monument to solitude and isolation, now pulsed with a different energy. Half of the grounds had been transformed into the first shelter of the new Dawn Foundation, with medical, psychological, and educational wings, specially designed for children and adolescents who are victims of abuse. It was a Sunday afternoon when the millionaire watched, through the window of his office, the garden where his daughter was leading a small group of girls in a planting activity. At 10 years old, she still carried the invisible scars of the past, but each day brought new signs of healing. The nightmares that had plagued her in the early months had gradually diminished. The prolonged silences gave way to increasingly animated conversations. The trust, so brutally destroyed, rebuilt itself patiently. "They adore her," commented the director of the center, a renowned child psychologist who had abandoned a promising academic career to lead the project. "There's something about someone who's been through the fire and survived that inspires others to believe in their own survival." The millionaire nodded, watching as his daughter patiently explained to an even smaller girl how to properly plant sunflower seeds. "Sometimes I wonder who's helping whom." "That's how true healing works," replied the director. "When we transform our pain into purpose, both sides benefit." Later that day, father and daughter followed their ritual of walking through the private garden they maintained on the other side of the property. It was a space just for them, separated from the foundation's facilities by a hedge of flowering shrubs. In the center of this garden, a special bed of white roses, their mother's favorite, grew vigorously. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the cold stone that marked the resting place of the woman he had abandoned, "for everything, for not being who you needed me to be, for all the lost years." The daughter silently intertwined her fingers with his. "But I promise," he continued, his voice choked, "that I will take care of her with my life, that I will try to be the father she deserves, that I will honor your memory through her every day." On the way back, the girl remained pensive, watching the landscape pass by the car window. "You know what else I miss about her?" she asked suddenly. "The way she looked at me, as if I were the most important thing in the world." The millionaire slowed down, parking the car on the shoulder of the rural road. He turned to his daughter, holding her small hands in his. "You are the most important thing in the world," he stated, each word laden with a certainty he had never felt about anything before. "Not just to me, but to all those girls at the foundation who see in you the hope that they can survive and thrive. To all the professionals who were inspired to leave comfortable careers to join our project. To every person who has read your story and found the courage to seek help or offer help to someone else." Silent tears streamed down the girl's face. "Sometimes I'm still afraid of the future." "Fear is natural," he replied, surprising himself with the wisdom he never knew he possessed. "The important thing isn't the absence of fear, but the courage to move forward despite it." Back at the mansion, they found the foundation staff gathered in the main garden. A small, impromptu celebration had been organized. A simple cake, decorations made by the sheltered children themselves, and a special gift, a photo album of the first year of activities. Father and daughter leafed through the images together. The opening of the center, the first intakes, the group therapy sessions, the art classes, the visible progress in faces that arrived devastated and gradually recovered their light. "We built something beautiful out of something terrible," commented the girl, stopping at a photograph where she appeared embracing another newly arrived child, offering the same comfort that she had once needed. "You built it," corrected the millionaire. "I just followed your lead." That night, when the house finally quieted, the millionaire sat alone in the office, reviewing the impressive numbers of the foundation's first year. Dozens of children served, several cases of successful family reunification after therapeutic intervention, partnerships established with hospitals and schools in the region. His phone rang. It was the lawyer with news about the criminal proceedings against his daughter's abusers. "Maximum sentences on all charges," he informed. "They won't be able to harm any other child for many years." Hanging up, the millionaire opened the top drawer of his desk, removing the old locket that had belonged to his daughter's mother, the same one that the girl had used to identify herself when she arrived at his door a year ago. Now she had a new copy, made especially for her, while this original piece rested here as a constant reminder of the transformative power of a second chance. "Thank you," he whispered to the gleaming object, a message directed both at the locket and at the woman who had sent it as the last protection for her daughter. "For not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself." Daddy! The next morning, the last Sunday before the start of the new school semester, father and daughter planted new seedlings of white roses together in the private garden. Their hands, so different in size and experience, worked side by side in the fertile soil, burying roots that would grow strong, that would bloom for many springs to come. "I think she would have loved this," commented the girl, looking with satisfaction at the completed work. "Seeing us together, building something new." The millionaire contemplated his daughter, no longer the terrified child who had knocked on his door in despair, but a young woman in recovery, growing in wisdom and compassion with each day. In her eyes, he saw not only the past shared with the woman he had loved, but a future of possibilities that he now had the privilege of helping to build. "Yes," he agreed, wrapping his arm protectively around her shoulders as they watched the garden that symbolized their joint journey of rebirth. "She would have loved this." If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new stories every day.